Now I've heard that you really like you like a really nice introduction, Jimmy.
I don't know. Have I said that before?
I've heard it a few times. You really like your introduction, so I'll do what I can. All right.
Oh, okay.
I can't promise anything. I'll do what I can. Ladies and
Okay.
gentlemen, with me today is a jagoff comedian from the United States who for 30 years has been entertaining drunks in nightclubs, and now he spends his days out scooping the New York Times and doing better work than the Washington Post and MSNBC and CNN, etc. It's the great Jimmy Dore. How are you, Jimmy?
I'm doing great. Thank you for that wonderful build-up. I hope I can live up to it. And it's fun to be here. I'm just sitting in my backyard trying to enjoy some of the July sun.
Yeah, it looks pretty beautiful over there, although the weather doesn't really depict just what a storm is going on in your country at the moment. I'm sure we're going to get to that, aren't we?
I guess so. I guess
Now,
so.
Jimmy, I can't have you on and not talk to you about the first time you probably ever became aware of me 3 years ago. It's back when you were at the Young Turks, and the second video I ever did went viral, and I think it caused you a bit of a grief, didn't it?
Remind me what the video was.
It was a video that says that was a question. It was Jimmy Dore's never going to be on the TYT main show again? Question mark. And it got 97,000 views, and you can imagine me sitting here from Wolverhampton, my second ever video. I was shitting myself that I was going to be the news that night on Monday.
Wow, I didn't. Wow, I remember that video. I didn't know it was that popular, but yeah, that is when I became aware of you. So yeah, as soon as you started doing videos, I knew who you were.
Yeah, I hopefully I didn't get you into too much trouble. It was a lot of people were talking about it apparently.
Did I ever make it back on the main show?
No. There was a lot of people saying that's not the case. They never said that, and well, here we are 3 years later. I don't think you were on it. I think you were on a special a couple of times. They did a special,
Yes.
A special election night thing, but you were never on the main show. So I think
well,
that stands.
Can I tell you, again, there's this old proverb, I don't know, but it's about perhaps, and it's about you never know what happens if it's actually going to be good or bad.
Yeah.
And so at the time, that was frustrating to me, not being able to, be the alternative voice on the main show. And I tried every which way to make sure I was on it. And I saw it just wasn't in the cards, and that the show that they gave me was behind a paywall. And it pushed me to build my own studio, which is in my garage, which is right there.
Yeah.
And so I was lucky enough to have a garage that I could build a studio in. And I was lucky enough that because of the Young Turks, enough people knew about me that I was able to do a crowdfunding, a GoFundMe, so I could raise the money to build that studio. And then it gave me the freedom that I'd always wanted in my career, and it gave me everything I always wanted. So what seemed like a bad thing at the moment was actually the flowering of everything I've ever wanted. And so that's just one of those things to remember, to stay open to, even if something seems negative in the moment, if you stay open to it and accept it, it actually can be used for positive transformation. And in fact, you actually can, I don't mean to get too new agey, but being open to whatever happens, accepting something that you think is negative actually transforms it into something positive. It's all about energy. I'm not that smart, but I read a lot of Eckhart Tolle and Ram Dass and Alan Watts. And
that's smart, he says. I'm not that smart. I just read Plato and Socrates, all these people, and I'm not that smart there. You're right, though. It's good luck, bad luck. My fiance, she talks to me about the story of the Chinese farmer's wife. I'm sure you've probably heard it. Horse. One day she wakes up and the horse has bolted, and husband says, what a terrible thing that is. And she says, well, good luck, bad luck, we'll see. And obviously, I won't repeat the story because I'll probably butcher it, but it is good luck, bad luck. And I truly believe that sometimes the worst things and the things that really knock us for six in life are the things that teach us the biggest lessons. And right now, we've got some real big lessons to learn because, well, let's stop on the YouTube thing. Let's stop on what we do for the time being before we get to the madness that is America and your country and my country at the moment. How are you finding YouTube? Because we just talked about how my second video got 97,000 views. So almost 100,000 views. My videos now get less than 1,000. I suspect this one might get a little bit more with you on. But
so it's I've heard this from a lot of people. It's certainly, there's nobody I know, new YouTuber or old YouTuber, who doesn't question the suppression of independent news on YouTube. So it's obviously there's, for instance, I had always suspected that there was a special list. I know Facebook has special white lists for people you're allowed, and I know that so through YouTube, I had always suspected there was a white list or a different list of like say approved news.
mm-hmm.
And that you would get pushed. So when I started, they didn't have any of these problems. The advertisers didn't run YouTube yet. And so YouTube was running YouTube. And so guys like you and me could, if we had something that was worth seeing and people liked, it would then trigger their algorithm and it would get pushed out more and more people would like it and you would become more popular. And then after the adpocalypse, they started to, I'm almost certain of it, there's different lists. For instance, so no one used to go to YouTube to watch MSNBC or CNN.
No.
Their videos would literally get 2,000 or 3,000 views, if that. And then all of a sudden, after Adpocalypse, they started recommending those. They created a new bar in the middle of the page where they have all the establishment news. And if no matter what, you're fed. So they can get 1 million, 2 million views now. And it's because YouTubes are pushing it. That's what's happening while they're suppressing independent media. And so what makes me think that there's several different lists? Well, for instance, so finally, my show got a YouTube liaison, right?
Right.
So for years, my show was on the Young Turks network. So if I had a problem, I would call the guy, their digital guy at the Young Turks, who had a direct connection to YouTube. So he could call somebody and they would talk to him. So
yeah, that's one of the advantages of being on a big network like that. You've got a bat you can swing around.
That's exactly right. So when I left them, I didn't have anybody. And so when I first started my show, and my show was on the Young Turks network, and before they started suppressing independent news, I was adding 1,000 people a day, subscribers a day, 1,000 people a day. And now you could say, well, Jimmy, that was during the 2016 election. I go, okay, well, we're in another goddamn election. Why is my channel barely growing? So I found out, so I finally got a liaison appointed, which was a super great. And it's really nice to have. And I think that my liaisons, they're not in the decision. They're not, all the decisions that we're talking about are above their pay grade.
Mm-hmm.
And that the people I actually have assigned to work with me actually are trying to help me, which it's true, right? Whereas I also think that the overall, at the upper levels of YouTube and Google and Alphabet, they also want to suppress independent news. So it's kind of like they're almost at cross purposes with each other. And what makes me think that? Well, in order to cover COVID and be monetized, you had to get approved. So we had to go through a process. We had to, like do some kind of certification, and that we would only use certified news sources to talk about it. And we wouldn't, they didn't want to put ads on a thing that was a quackpot medical thing. That's what they were afraid of, right? So the independent news that they felt comfortable with that could cover it, they put on a white list, for lack of a better term, a white list. So that's when I immediately knew that, well, they have these lists. They have, because I'm on one.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious.
And so, okay, so now we're allowing Silicon Valley, like I always say on my show, we're allowing nameless, faceless Silicon Valley billionaires to decide who gets a platform and who doesn't. What news gets to be seen. You know, Google and Facebook account for over 70% of all the news consumed in the United States. So so what, Jimmy? Well, that means that a very small group of people can control the information that our entire culture consumes, which means they can control the culture. And that's very dangerous. That's why we have what they call in America antitrust legislation, which just means anti-monopoly legislation. And what the government's supposed to do when there's monopolies, they're supposed to break it up into smaller companies, because capitalism has a tendency to eat itself, and then you become one big company monopoly, which is bad. It's great for the bottom line of the company, but it's not good for the culture of society. So competition, but we got rid of competition in our field, right? Our field is news and entertainment, right? Broadcasting in the United States in 1996, we used to have 50 giant media companies, right? Well, now we have 6. Why is that? Because in 1996, Bill Clinton passed what's called the Telecommunications Act. Now, Bill Clinton's supposed to be a lefty, and what he did was he took us from 50 giant media companies down to 6. So now everybody, every radio station, every TV show, every Spotify is owned by Google. Everything's owned by each other, right? So now everybody works for 6 companies, which is why our country's in the place it is. 80% of workers live paycheck to paycheck. 80 million people, no insurance or underinsured, in the richest country the history of the world has ever seen. And we're just about to make 23 million more homeless people. So that's the result of not having independent media. And right now on YouTube, people like you and I are definitely being suppressed. I used to get way more views 4 years ago when I had 8 times less subscribers. So that's obviously happening. So my show is still growing. I'm at like something like around 775,000 subscribers. And when this coronavirus started, I went from getting 8 million views a month up to getting 16, right? Because more people were watching and I was producing more. So, but lately, so anyway, so it's still a fantastic platform, even with them suppressing us or not pushing us the way they used to. It's still a fantastic platform. YouTube is better than all the other platforms for what we do. People keep saying, well, let's try this, let's try that, let's try it. They're just inferior. It's just like how iTunes sucks. And there just isn't anybody else who's going to be able to do it. And if somebody else is able to be a competitor with YouTube, Google will just buy them.
Yeah.
That's just a fact. It's just not going to happen. So, I mean, they bought WhatsApp for $20 billion fucking dollars. So what do you think they're going to buy? If somebody invents another YouTube, they'll just buy it. They don't care if it costs $500 billion. They'll just buy it. So we're left with monopolies. Jeff Bezos is now worth more money than McDonald's. So, so again, and it's not going to come through voting in America. People are still silly. They still think it's going to come from voting, and it's not. It's going to come from people being in the streets. But that's just my opinion.
No, I agree with you, and we'll come to that in a bit. The YouTube thing is just get out of hand now. I mean, you're still growing. I had a letter from Julian Assange the month before. I added 3,000 subscribers. I think 2,000 the month before that. I was only on 18,000 subscribers. I got a letter from Julian Assange, went public, and I haven't put on a single subscriber since, and that's in like 9 months. So, I mean, you know, they switched me off, Jimmy. Now, I know at the time, this is going back to June last year, and there was an algorithm change, you may remember, in June last year, that everybody got hit. It was coincided around that time. But I got turned off. I've literally not added a single subscriber since then. And like you say, it's really frustrating because there's nobody else really you can go to. There's no, you know, I'm on iTunes and Spotify and all those places, but there's nowhere else you can go to get your message out there. I'm literally just in the position at the moment where I'm going to have to start maybe marketing myself and getting myself out there on some sort of email list, etc., and just ignoring YouTube totally, because there's no point in putting videos on there. They're not getting seen and they're not putting them in front of people.
So there's a company or some guys in Chicago, and they're called Hard Lens Media, and they do progressive news like we do. And same thing that happened to you happened to them. And so they decided that they started over with a whole new channel.
Right.
Because they figured out that they were being what they called shadow banned. And they same thing that you experienced. They weren't adding it. They went from adding 300 to 400 subscribers a day to adding none. And so yeah, so it's a real thing. You know, if there's a way to break up Google and Facebook, it should be broken up. If there's a way to break up YouTube, it should be. I'm not smart enough to know how to do that, but I'm certainly smart enough to know that one of the reasons given when Bill Clinton did that Telecommunications Act and consolidated the media like that, because there used to be all these restrictions for media ownership in the United States that don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't own a TV station and a radio station and a television
Yeah.
and a newspaper, and you couldn't own two newspapers. So that we had diversity of opinion, which is the lifeblood of a democracy. And so one of the big reason they gave was that there's this new thing called the internet, and people will be able to broadcast and do it themselves, and you'll be able to put up, and people will be able. Well, quickly we figured out that although I have the ability to put up a website, that Facebook and YouTube really are the people who can bring that message, right? So they're really the printing press.
Yeah.
Right. So and to me, I really think that if YouTube is now the town square, if Twitter and Facebook are the town square, which I think they are, they're a public utility, and so they need to be regulated. And you can't restrict someone's free speech because you don't like it. And that's if somebody goes into a physical town square and starts to use speech that's illegal in some way, he gets a court date.
Yeah.
You get a court. They might stop you from speaking temporarily, but in America, you are guaranteed a speedy and swift trial. That's. I don't know if they always abide by that, but that's what you're promised in our Constitution anyway. So, but now we can be silenced in the town square with nothing, without even a hearing or even a rationale or an arbitrary judge, nothing. And I'm like, so if you can do that to people you hate, you can do that to anybody. And that's what Chomsky always says. If you believe in free speech, that means you believe in the free speech of people you hate, or you don't believe in free speech.
Well, that's what it's there for. It's not there to protect speech that you like. Nobody needs to protect speech people like. It's the stuff that you don't like that it's there to protect. We have laws over here that are much more stringent than yours. You probably remember the guy who ended up getting community service a couple of years ago because he taught his dog to Nazi salute whenever he said "gas the Jews." So, and he ended up having some community service, and this obviously is something that wouldn't be prosecuted in America. No. So it's interesting. I'm a bit of a I never used to be, but I've become more of a free speech absolutist now. I'm more let people say whatever they want, whatever they want to say. If they want to be racist pieces of shit, let them carry on being racist pieces of shit. But people will generally be repulsed by that, not attracted to it. We need more of that and less of the silencing and the banning, especially because
what I was
doing. Sorry, you carry on.
What was interesting to me, Gordon, was when I was having these discussions with other people, even at the Young Turks, who were I was on the opposite side of the argument when it came to social media like YouTube and Twitter and Facebook being able to arbitrarily ban. And the argument that was given to me was that, well, if they're doing something harmful like what Alex Jones is doing, where it's hurting the families of the Sandy Hook, and people are harassing them because of what Alex Jones is doing, and they're harassing the victims of Sandy Hook because of what Alex Jones is doing. And I'm like, well, what if he was doing that in a newspaper? Would you shut down his newspaper, or would you have to first file a lawsuit? I mean, it's the exact. I agree with you that maybe what he's doing is egregious, and so file a lawsuit. And then if he's violating an actual law or something, then but you can't take
exactly what they did. They filed a lawsuit. That's exactly what they did.
That's right. That's exactly what they did. But that was after they kicked him off of YouTube and Twitter and whatever. And then he was also sued afterwards. So so we have a system in place. We've had this system in place forever We know what the libel law is. We know what defamation is. We know what all this stuff is. And because of social media, we decided to just chuck all that stuff in the United States and let some Silicon Valley billionaires decide who gets free speech. And it's because they say it's a private company, which they are private companies, which I say now we should nationalize them.
Yeah.
They are it's in the country's interest. You know, like like it's been ruled that the president can't block you on Twitter, right? Because you have a right. Those are considered official things from the government, and you have a right to those. So now, I don't see how you could do that and then take away someone else's free speech in the same breath and saying because it's a private company and blah blah blah. And so I would think there would have been a reckoning a lot sooner in the United States, but the United States gave up on freedom somewhere around 9/11.
Yeah, I do, it certainly seems that way. I heard a stat yesterday. I think it was yesterday, although it was an RT. So I'm probably repeating Russian propaganda, Jimmy. I'm repeating.
Okay.
I'm repeating misinformation from Putin. The United States is currently sanctioning nearly 7,000 entities, which includes 39 countries. And those 39 countries have an estimated 2 billion people living there. Now, as we know, you don't fire missiles anymore and bombs. You fire sanctions and cyber warfare. This is what kills people. Sanctions kill people. So that's 25% of the planet at the moment the United States is at war with. And this is just to protect the corporations. This is what it's there to protect. When they say their interests around the world, they mean their companies in the Middle East pumping out Iranian gas or Syrian gas through the Golan Heights, etc. You know, this is where when people say, "Oh, you can't kick people off YouTube because they're private companies," they're making an argument to not let these private companies actually be the town square and the place, the platform where people have these opinions and can share their opinions. Because look at what's happening around the world. You're at war with 25% of the planet because of your corporations, to protect your corporations, and of course the Ponzi scheme that goes with it, by which I mean Wall Street.
So it's quite a jarring statistic when you put it that way.
Hell of a statistic. It was George Galloway as well, so if it's wrong, blame him, not me.
Okay,
Doubt very much it will be though if it's George.
Things are so bad in the United States politically. Our government is so corrupt. It's almost hard to imagine. Can you imagine Jeremy Corbyn quitting his campaign for prime minister to help campaign for someone who is pledged to dismantle the health service? Could you imagine that happening? Because that's what Bernie Sanders is doing right now. He said if Medicare for all, which is not even what you have, it's completely private healthcare in the United States that's just paid for by the government through a system called Medicare. Mm-hmm. And if that passed, which the whole country wants, even Trump voters want it now. Everybody wants it. Our government's not giving it to us. Why? Because they're bought and captured and corrupted by the money from Big Pharma and by health insurance corporate. It's flat out corruption. And so that's the only reason why we don't have it. And so right now, Bernie Sanders stopped trying to get it and is trying to tell everybody to vote for the guy who has pledged to veto it if it passes the House and Senate. He has pledged that it's over his dead body while he's president, we are not getting fucking healthcare like the rest of the world. And Bernie Sanders is out there now screaming at you, saying you're irresponsible unless you vote for that guy in the middle of a pandemic, Gordon. That's how shitty it is. And that's our best guy in America, a fucking sellout like that.
I was saying last year how when he was capitulating on, this, that, and the other, you could see, I mean, let's face it, they cheated the crap out of him in 2016, and then he spent the next 4 years trying to shepherd people into a party, which is you call it, it's the graveyard of progressives. I mean, look at what has happened to the progressives that have got there. I mean, I was giddy when AOC won. I was giddy.
Me
I'm
too.
6,500 miles away, and I was, yes, finally, there's a progressive. And look at what has happened. That's an actress up there.
That's an actress.
It's an actress, and it's a sham what it's become, because it seems to me that I mean, I hopefully Americans can get this now. They can see what's happening. You show people the monster. The monster. This is the monster. Or you get slightly less of a monster. And that's it. They're just trying to scare you with Trump. That's all Trump's doing. They don't care whether who wins or who loses. They don't give a shit as long as one of them wins. They will continue. With Biden, you will get the same thing as Trump, just with a smile on his face, and and maybe you'll get some better bills go through with regards to abortion. But that's it. That's it. That's all you're going to get.
It's all shit on the margins. It's like, hey, do you want? They're like, well, he's better on the environment. Oh, so when they say that Biden is better on the environment than Trump, what they mean is Biden wants Florida to be under 2 inches of water, and Trump wants it to be under 3 inches of water. Exactly. That's their difference. The reason why we have people in the streets saying defund the police and burning down police stations is because Joe Biden created the fucking crime bill, which put all the black people in jail. That's who Joe Biden is.
I've heard him brag about the crime bill, and I've heard him brag about writing the draft for the Patriot Act as well.
That's correct.
He brags about writing the first draft for the Patriot Act.
So, and people are still saying you have to vote for him because Trump. Now, we learned through WikiLeaks and Julian Assange that Hillary Clinton's campaign set it up that way. They wanted to run against. They wanted to find the most despicable, repulsive guy they could run against so they could win. And it was called the Pied Piper theory, because they knew she was so repulsive to people that they weren't going to vote for her, but they would vote against someone else if they found him repulsive enough. Oopsie, she was wrong. It was actually, there were more people willing to vote for Trump in Michigan and Wisconsin than for her. So she lost.
It just goes to show. I mean, what I said was right. It just goes to show that does. She knew she was horrible, so she just got the media to prop up who she thought was more horrible than her. She didn't think, I'll change my ways, I'll go and get the vote. She just thought, no, let's get them to put up somebody more horrible than me, and then we'll win.
Can you imagine knowing that was her strategy, and as a voter, and then going, well, I'm going to do exactly what her plan is? Could you imagine that? No. I can't. I don't know what the mentality of that is. Hillary Clinton set it up this way, and then they go, yeah, but it's grown up. It's grown up to be a willing tool of a warmongering corporatist. That's exactly how they set it up, you fucking idiot. You are a willing dupe now who's being naive, okay? And so it's just, I guess it's because I come from comedy and all the other YouTubers come from wanting to be in news media, that I don't fall into that trap that they fall into. I don't need to be on the inside. I'm already on an inside. It's called stand-up comedy. I'm on the inside. I love being on the outside of everything else. I don't want to be on the inside of journalism, because journalism in America is a shameful profession. You are doing the bidding of billionaires who are raping and pillaging the earth right now. That's what we all know. Manufacturing consent was before Bill Clinton did that bill that consolidated everything down to 6. That's when we had 50 giant media companies. They were hired specifically to manufacture consent. So when you see Rachel Maddow or Brian Williams or Chris Cuomo or Anderson Cooper or Wolf Blitzer, they are only there because what they are saying is forwarding the narrative that the oligarchs, the 16 billionaires that own all the media in the United States, wants to be pushed. They are what's called manufacturing consent. Consent for what? Consent for war, consent for no health care, consent for Wall Street bailouts, consent for kicking people out of their house as we make them. So that's what the consent is for. The consent is for cops are good and people need to be locked up. So they're manufacturing consent for the corporation and the establishment. And they did a study at Princeton University, and and the conclusion of the study was that we no longer live in a democracy in the United States. That's not hyperbole. That's a fact. That's a scientifically provable fact that our democracy has already been taken away from us. We live in an oligarchy. And if you think voting matters, you're a sucker and a chump.
Let's vote our way out of this rigged election, Jimmy. We can do it.
Yeah. Vote harder.
Sorry? I didn't get that. I didn't get what you said then.
Oh, yeah. No, vote harder.
Oh, vote hard. It said vote Carter. I was going to say, who the fucking hell's Carter? Yeah, my mate Steve Poikinen says that the news doesn't just manufacture consent anymore; it manufactures confusion. And we have seen this for the last 4 years. I find it hilarious when the BBC have great drives to eradicate fake news in the media when they are the biggest perpetrators of it in the UK, at least.
So the argument is always given Alex Jones, Sandy Hook, and what his followers did to the victims of Sandy. That's always the. So what about someone like me when CNN does a hit piece and puts me in it?
Oh yeah.
And tries to smear me. Now they have a real platform. They have people look at them as legit news, and we know that they're lying about me, and they're lying about the Syrian war, and they were lying about the gas attacks, and they wanted to smear me, and they called me a conspiracy theorist who says the Syrian gas attacks are a hoax. Well, they were, and I was proven right. They've never retracted that. So how come? So now they lied about me. Should we take down CNN? Because of all the personal damage I'm feeling from that? No, there's a legal system. I could go to court. Of course, I would lose because they have bigger lawyers than me. They have an endless supply of lawyer money. So this idea that somehow we need to take away free speech to protect people is fucking the exact opposite of what we're supposed to be doing. That's how fucked up it is in America. We have to take away free speech so we can protect people, which is what dictators always say. We have to protect you from outside information. That's bad information. That's coming from our enemies. That's propaganda. That's what they say in North Korea. That's what they say in China. That's what all totalitarian states say. And that's what we're doing to ourselves in the United States. And that's the event. Well, I mean, that's capitalism. We're in the end stages of capitalism, where a guy like Jeff Bezos makes $16 billion a day while we're kicking 23 million people out of their house, and we're in the middle of a Great Depression. That's capitalism working its magic.
It's doing fantastic capitalism, Jimmy. I don't know what you're talking about. It seems to be going fine. It's working exactly as it's designed to, isn't it? Didn't Marx predict this? I haven't read Marx, but I think he predicted like 120 years ago or something.
Well, again, I'm not a Marxist scholar or any kind of scholar, but I have had a Marxist scholar on my show. And, capitalism eventually eats itself if it's unregulated. So people like to say the free market. There is no such thing as a free market. Markets are invented by guys who have shit to sell, and they want rules to protect themselves. That's what a market is. They invent fucking rules to protect themselves. There's nothing free about it. It's all the guys with all the money and power create the rules, which is what NAFTA is, which is what they wanted the TPP to be. And they want to supersede local governments. They want to supersede any kind of control by the people. And they want to hand it over to corporations and corporate courts. And the judges are handpicked by the corporations. So this is the neoliberal corporate nightmare, Orwellian nightmare. It's all coming together in a perfect storm right now. And so either the United States is going to slide into being like Brazil even more. We're pretty much like Brazil now, but we're going to keep sliding into it even more, or we'll have a revolution. We had the beginnings of a revolution. I was surprised even during a pandemic how many people went out in the streets and continued to do so, and they're continuing to do so.
Yeah.
So the problem is we have nobody who has a nutsack in politics. Bernie Sanders is a nutless wonder, and he's actually your enemy. It's so hard for me to say.
Malcolm X, you haven't got the Malcolm X figure. You haven't got you haven't got that guy, that leader, have you?
No, we don't have anybody who puts the fear of God into our elected leaders.
Somebody who can talk for the masses.
No. Even our social institutions are compromised. The ones that you would normally think would stand up for people, you know, they're compromised. Look at how the NAACP has been compromised in the age of Trump, because they started getting millions and millions of donations because people hate Trump, and then they're kind of quiet on all the shit that would actually prop up the freedom of speech that goes against their donors. So everyone's beholden to their donors, and that's the beauty of being on YouTube, is that, you know, we don't really have donors. We don't have a donor class controlling us, and there is an absolute firewall between our editorial content and our advertising. So that's what they used to brag about before. Oh, there's a firewall. Our editorial and our news department never talks to the advertising department. That never it's an influence. And now, well, Chomsky wrote Manufacturing Consent, and we know that's all bullshit. But on YouTube, it actually is the case. I don't even know the commercials that run on my show, nor do I procure them. YouTube does, which is why they suppress us.
It is really sick. I mean, I find it funny with social media that, you know, with the great boom of social media in the last 20 years, that they were all about connecting everybody in the world, weren't they? Connect everybody. Now they've connected everybody, they're thinking, oh, fuck, yeah, disconnect. Just stop people connecting with each other. For fuck's sake, this transfer of ideas is really starting to get on our wick. You know, it's really pissing on our parade here.
Well, don't you like the idea, Gordon, that somehow if they just ban people who they don't like from Twitter and Facebook, they'll go away?
They'll go away, and once they've banned them, Jimmy, those ideas are dead. That's it.
Dead.
Those ideas don't live anywhere else in the world at all. They don't go off and fester in a corner and other people don't go there, where they can only hear those points of view and not a counter point of view, so they could maybe, you know, make a logical conclusion. No. It goes and it dies. That's it.
I'm the kind of guy, I prefer a wolf in wolf's clothing. And so I don't want people to pretend they're not something they are, so they can keep their Twitter status or their Facebook page. If somebody's a racist, I want to know they're racist. If somebody wants to overthrow the government, I want to know about. If somebody, you know, it's like, why are we taking away, it's ideas are bad. Ideas are bad. And I'm not talking about violence. I'm talking about ideas. And let's remember that the guy who founded this country, George Washington, he didn't do a peaceful protest when he was upset. He didn't vote for the lesser of two evil kings. He got a gun and he shot guys in the fucking head.
It sounds violent, and it sounds terrible, and I'm not advocating it, but elections are not your salvation. Elections, was it? One of my friends said once, salvation. Your salvation does not lie in elections. Your salvation. Yeah. This election.
It does not appear that we're going to be able to vote ourselves out of this problem, because there is no way to vote ourselves out of this problem. I would have. Go ahead.
This November, is it? You've got two choices in America. You've got, let's face it, a man accused of rape who half the time lies, and the other half the time you can't make any fucking sense out of what he said. Somebody who was basically lied and cheated all of his fucking life. And his opponent is Donald Trump. That's your choice this November. You know,
your choice was an outwardly racist, sociopathic liar, or an inwardly racist sociopathic liar who's been doing more damage. Joe Biden has done more damage to this country than Donald Trump has cumulatively. Donald Trump, he's trying real hard to make up. I mean, he'll probably catch him. But this idea is somehow that voting for a Democrat like Joe Biden is anything but a step backwards and the opposite of what America needs. If you don't want people in the streets, voting for Joe Biden is not the answer. That's the sure way to get more people in the streets. Keep denying them health care, keep denying them an economic leg up. Bernie Sanders voted for the largest upward transfer of wealth in the history of the human race, which was called the CARES Act, which was a $5 trillion transfer of wealth in the middle of a fucking Great Depression and a pandemic, upwards, before giving people health care, before giving people a UBI, and they've kicked everybody out of their jobs. They didn't do that in other countries. Germany's, they didn't kick people out of their jobs. Their unemployment rate went up 1%. It was like 6%. Ours skyrocketed, went through the roof. People were saying the real unemployment rate was 25%. And why the fuck would we do that? Because we live in a rapacious oligarchy oligarchy. That's been proven by the Princeton study. There is no more democracy. Our number one lefty in America, Bernie Sanders, is currently campaigning for the machine that's fucking you in the ass. And he's not pushing him to give us health care or a UBI or to fund the police or do a goddamn thing. He's telling you to vote for Joe Biden, who is the cause of Donald Trump. You know, Joe Biden was in the White House for 8 straight years, and then we got Donald Trump. Why the fuck do you think people voted for Donald Trump? Because things were going great in their lives, or because they were so goddamn desperate they were willing to try their fucking luck with a game show host political novice? I should say the latter.
It's so funny. I heard a few people on Twitter, some of the blue check marks on Twitter, arguing the other day that you need to vote for Joe Biden now because then we can push him in the right direction after the election.
Well,
if only he had a position of power for 8 years this decade where he could have maybe done something about that.
This is my biggest pet peeve. Is people who say, you need to vote for Joe Biden because you can push him. You know, I've seen Bill McKibben say that in that movie. Well, you vote for who's closest to you, then you try to knock him around a little bit. Oh, really? What is the evidence you ever knocked around Barack Obama or Joe Biden? What is the evidence? When he opened up the Arctic to drilling twice, when they laid fracking pipes from fucking coast to coast underneath this country, when he made the banks bigger, when he took us from 2 wars to 7, when he made the Bush tax cuts permanent, when he kicked 8 million people out of their house in the middle of a financial. When the fuck did you move Joe Biden? Never.
I'd argue.
This idea that you hear from other lefty YouTubers that we're going to vote for Joe Biden because we can push him afterwards is ridiculous on its face. The only time you have influence over a politician is before the election, when he needs your vote. If you can't move him before the election, you ain't going to move him after. You're bullshitting your own fucking viewers now. You're a piece of shit liar.
Yes, and there's not only that, but you could make a really good case. I mean, I could make a really good case right now that the last thing you want to do is get the Democrats in there, because the Democrats, it's seemingly all they do is make it easier for somebody who's even worse to come in next time on the Republicans. You just mentioned there Clinton and the Telecommunications Act. There's no way a Republican would have got away with that, is there, Jimmy? There's no way a Republican would have got away with that. Look at Obama, 2 wars to 7. Surely there would have been some resistance there. And obviously you got the 2 wars to 7, and then just before he handed over to what he was calling was the biggest threat America had ever seen, and they were arguing was Putin's puppet, he expanded his spying powers. Expanded the spying powers, then handed it over to Donald Trump.
So that's the illusion. You have an illusion of opposition. You have the illusion of a 2-party system. And it is exactly that, is an illusion. As Thomas Frank pointed out, Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, they pay fealty to democracy. They know the words. They know all the words about freedom and choice and liberation. But when they govern like Republicans, exactly like right-wingers. Or why? Because they are right-wingers. Bill Clinton was not the lesser of 2 evil. That's what people keep saying. Well, Barack Obama was the lesser of 2 evil. And I say you are incorrect. Bill Clinton would not have been allowed to explode the prison population while gutting the welfare state, while consolidating the media, while also deregulating Wall Street at the same time without a huge pushback from the left. But he was allowed to do it, and pass NAFTA, by the way. You know, his predecessor could not pass NAFTA. It took a Democrat to pass NAFTA. So that's my argument. Nobody, by the way, who disagrees with me ever talks about that stuff. They don't have an argument for that. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They're establishment repeaters, even people who people think are really far left, who tell you to vote Biden, they're not left. I don't know what to fucking tell you. Those people are not left. They're not advocating for leftyism. They're advocating for you voting for a right-winger who's gonna fuck you. And that's just a fact. And that voting for Joe Biden, voting for Barack Obama was not the lesser of 2 evils, because just as you pointed out, which I pointed out many times, I don't think John McCain would have been allowed to kick 8 million people out of their houses in the middle of bailing out Wall Street.
He certainly wouldn't have gone from 2 wars to 7.
Taking us from 2 wars to 7, people would have been screaming bloody murder. Open the fucking Arctic to drilling. People would have been screaming. There would have been at least been pushback. There was none under Barack Obama. Libya, are you fucking kidding? Anyway, so it's just amazing to me. And so that's where we are in America. We're with our biggest and brightest lefty actively selling you out at the top of his lungs. And who was that? That's Bernie Sanders.
I will take issue with one thing you said there. I don't think it's an illusion anymore. I really don't. I don't think it's an illusion. I think it's plain for everybody to see.
They don't though. That's I wish they look at the blue check Hollywood. You see that they don't see it. They don't. And what it doesn't bring me any joy to see my friends from comedy say things like, Barack Obama was the greatest president of my lifetime. It's like, oh my God, you're so rich now. You're not an artist anymore. You're not.
I get it. I mean, if you're not paying attention like we are, like pre 2016, I would say 2014, Jimmy, like 6 years ago, I was saying stuff like, oh, I wish we had a president like Barack Obama over here, somebody we could look up to. I was saying stuff like that. So you can see why people are sort of, are fooled by the show, but it is really, I mean, now it should, I mean, I was woke up in 2016. Surely others have woken up to it now.
Yeah, I was woken up to Barack Obama in 2012. I voted for him anyway. I thought, well, maybe he'll actually start being a lefty in his second term because he doesn't have to worry about it anymore. I was sadly mistaken. He's a right winger. Barack Obama was a right winger. Bill Clinton's a right winger. Joe Biden's a right winger. Hillary Clinton is a right winger. They're right wingers. Anybody, even right wingers, even Boris Johnson, even in the UK, would never come out against Medicare for all. They would never do that.
Not publicly.
So even your right wingers who we think are a joke are more left than our lefties in America.
There's a sketch from, I think it's 1960s. I was talking to Ron Placone about this a couple of weeks ago. You know Ron, don't you, Jimmy? He writes your jokes. He makes you funny.
Yes, he makes me funny.
I remember I was talking to him about it was a sketch. I think it was Dudley Moore. It got to be 50 years ago. It's got to be 1960s. And he's with an American chap, and the American chap is explaining American politics to the British man. And he says to him, well, we have the Republicans, who are the equivalent of your Conservative Party back home, and then we have the Democrats, which are the equivalent of your Conservative Party back home. That was 1960 something, Jimmy.
John F. Kennedy gave a speech in like 1961 talking about giving people health care like they've done decades ago in Europe. And this isn't a new radical idea. He said that in 1960. So that was that 60 years ago now? So that just goes to show you the capitalism and the corrupting power of capitalism, of democracy. That it's just, and again, it's really doesn't make me feel good to see. I liked it better in 2016 when everybody on the left on YouTube was together. We had a mission. We all had a single, and then it just all went to shit.
So the coronavirus has hit, Jimmy. This has really messed you and your plans up, hasn't it? How have you coped with it over there?
Well, I worked my whole life to try to build up a following so I could tour as a comedian and do comedy shows live.
You just started selling shit out as well.
So I've had Comedy Central special. I've had a couple of Comedy Central specials. I had a special on Hulu. I've been on Jimmy Kimmel and CBS and NBC and all the cable channels. And I never was able to sell tickets until my YouTube show. And it's just a dream. I mean, I toured the improvs, I headlined improvs, and I've been to festivals, and I've been to Australia and Amsterdam, and I've done comedy all over the world, and it's been a great ride. But when you can sell tickets, it's such a different experience, and it's something I've craved. And so it finally happened, and I've been touring. I started touring really heavy when I left the Young Turks like a year and a half ago, and I said I wanted to tour, and that's exactly what I've been doing. And it's like, I mean, woe is me. My big problem is I can't tour to sold out theaters anymore, but I know it'll happen again as soon as the vaccine. So I'm being super careful because this is the best time of my life as far, professionally. And so I don't want to fuck it up. I don't want to fucking die now when I just want to tour for 10 years and then I'll retire. That's really what I want to do.
If I were you right now, I wouldn't go anywhere. I'd get everything delivered and I'd be sitting in my room in a cloud of cannabis smoke. That's exactly what I'd be doing until this whole thing had bloody passed over and we've got some sort of vaccine.
That's exactly what I am doing, Gordon. I won't go inside a building. I won't go inside any building anywhere, no matter where I am. I drove across the country a couple of weeks ago, but I bought an RV. I mean,
Okay.
I rented an RV, so I had a toilet. I didn't have to go into a gas station. I didn't go inside of a wall. I didn't have to go anywhere to get food. We had a fridge, and I cooked it. So all my groceries are delivered, and I wipe everything down with bleach when it gets here. I know it's a little overkill, but again, this is the best time of my life professionally. I've worked 30 years to get here. I don't want to fuck it up now.
Well, I assume then that you, if you were over here, because our government yesterday, I believe it was, have mandated that when we go into a shop now, we must wear a mask. Where are you on masks, Jimmy? Are you pro-mask?
So I hate wearing masks. I hate wearing them. I hate it. But if you look at the data from the countries that practice mask wearing, like Japan, and they have subways and they live on top of each other, so they had a much less impact from coronavirus. So I gotta say we should go masks because it seems like the data supports it. Even as much as I fucking hate it, and I hate it, I wear a mask even when I walk my dog.
I don't know about you, mate, but the way I look at it is this: you can take away freedom of the press, you can take away our free speech, you can take away our democracy, you can take away our sovereignty and give it another country who's pressuring you or blackmailing you or whatever. You can take away all those things. You can take it all away. You can make us take off our fucking shoes at the airport and then go through an x-ray machine where I have to stand there like Vesuvian Man whilst the high digital camera takes a picture of my bollocks, Jimmy. But don't tell me to wear a mask. That's where you're taking the liberties away from the great British people. This is the way people are speaking over here. Can you fuck it? It's insane. Honestly, I think of this coronavirus when it hits. I'm like you. When it hit a few months ago, I use my common sense. You obviously have an underlying health condition, so you've been extra careful. I have people who I love who are old. So I've been extra careful as well. The first thing I did was, right, okay, I don't want to get it, so I'll look after my health. So I started running, and I've got fit in the last few months. I really have. The next thing I thought was, right, okay, I need to sort out my diet. So I started cooking. I've become quite a good chef. And the third, you know what I did? The third thing I did, Jimmy? I bought a fucking mask. It's so stupid. People are calling each other maskists, and it's like, are you kidding me? They threw journalism in fucking jail last year in London, and you're complaining about having to wear a mask in fucking B&Q. Are you kidding me?
You're exactly right. This is exactly what I've been saying. They've already taken your democracy away, and you're pissed off about masks.
It was common sense. They said it was a virus that was transmitted through the air. I bought a fucking mask.
Yes. Well, the thing here in the United States, though, everybody says that Trump is the one who's lying about everything, and hydroxychloroquine. Turns out hydroxychloroquine, when used with the azithromycin and zinc at the beginning of coronavirus, is now the recommended treatment.
Yes.
And Dr. Fauci, who everyone says is the Jesus Christ of doctors who can't lie, lied to us and said, don't wear masks, they don't help. And the reason why he lied was because he was afraid that people would go out and buy all the masks, and then we would have a run on them and we wouldn't have masks for our medical professionals. So what he did was he endangered everyone's life on purpose, lying to us. That to me is disqualifying. How could you ever fucking believe that guy ever again, ever? And that doesn't get reported in the media. I tell people that and they act like I'm making it up.
Yeah, for a doctor, it'd make a great picture.
Yeah.
Is he lied and it's plain that he lied, because I think he lied for the same reason they lied over here. They've only just mandated masks. I mean, I went out and bought one before this pandemic, before the lockdown actually hit. I'd ordered mine. And they did the same thing over here. I think that they were saying, no, the masks don't work because there was a massive shortage of them. And they were trying to cover up for the fact that their neoliberalism and their greed meant that they wouldn't even stockpile masks, which are what, at 10 cents? Facebook stockpiled masks, Jimmy. Facebook stockpiled masks in California to stop because they were worried about the bushfires, remember? And the government didn't stockpile masks, knowing that they'd had 2 other coronavirus outbreaks in the last 20 years. 2. This is the 3rd COVID outbreak in the last 20 years, and they didn't stockpile things that cost what, 10 cents?
So they have plenty of money for tear gas, but no money for masks.
Not tear gas, irritants, Jimmy. Irritants now. It's same as it's not. It's enhanced interrogation and irritants. It's not torture and tear gas.
Enhanced interrogation. It sounds nice. It sounds like they're going to put on mood music and track lighting, right? It's enhanced. It sounds nice. What they're really going to do is hook your balls up to a car battery and then take turns drowning you. That's the enhanced they're talking about.
I want to talk to you about Russiagate while I've got you, because we when this comes out, I don't know whether it's ever going to come out in the mass, in the mind of the general public, that we were right all along and the media were wrong. I've got a feeling that this is just going to carry on with the bullshit being the narrative.
Yeah, no, there's never going to be, I'm sorry. Even my good friend, that was a big conflict between me and the Young Turks, the narrative over Russiagate.
You could see.
And when I had Cenk on my show in my studio, right there, he said he agreed with me that all that Russiagate stuff was all correct. He didn't believe in the hacking and Trump helping, and that's what he said anyway. But he has a new one that Russia controlled him because of financial crimes that Mueller didn't look into. So there's never going to be this mea culpa. There used to be this. When people would go, when they would go out with a posse in the Old West in America, they would always bring in, that was the lawmen looking for a wanted man, a criminal, an outlaw. Mm-hmm. And they'd always bring an extra horse or two, because if their horse got tired, they just jump on that new horse and keep going, right?
Yeah.
So that's what's happened. So Cenk just jumped on a new horse, and Russiagate horse, and kept going. And
it keeps coming in one.
It's the distinction without a difference. Well, I don't believe in this Russia conspiracy theory, but I have another one, and it's the effect is the exact same. Trump is compromised by Russia, and he's a Manchurian candidate. It's horribly corrosive for our democracy, and the fact that it came from the left it's really unforgivable. It really is. I don't know how else to say it. I don't know how those people can watch a movie like Good Night and Good Luck, or even the fucking Post.
Yeah.
And I just don't know how people can do that and then do what they're doing. It's just gross. And to think that a jagoff nightclub comedian who smokes pot when he wakes up in the morning has more integrity and better journalism skills than all of them, that 99.9% of them, shows you that journalism sucks in America fucking hard.
It does over here too. I sort of robbed what you talk about, being a jagoff comedian doing better work than I say I'm a twice failed bankrupt bloody businessman from the Midlands, and I outscoop the CNN and the New York Times on a regular basis, Jimmy. On a regular, it's not difficult. Honestly, I too smoke pot when I wake up in the morning, and it's fucking easy.
It's easy. They hand it to you. Here you go. Here's your fake story.
And when I make a mistake, I'm fucking mortified, and I turn the camera on, and I'm, guys, I've made a mistake. I'm really sorry. This is why I made a mistake. I'm so sorry. Can you forgive me? When they make a mistake, it's move on. Like you say, jump on that horse.
Yeah, I made a mistake recently with that with the Joe Biden video that was doctored that I didn't know it was, because I got, and my producer actually had gotten it right from C-SPAN's website.
Right.
And so we got duped on that one, but we immediately pulled it. I didn't leave it up with an editor's note. I immediately pulled it, and I announced to my audience, yeah, that was a fucking duped. We got duped. Came right from C-SPAN, but that was our mistake. And yeah, everyone makes mistakes. That's why you open in the New York Times and they have a retraction page, but it's not on the front page. You notice that, Eric?
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, but I don't get the things that we get wrong is shit like that. But the things that we don't get wrong, Gordon, is like, oh, maybe we should go invade Libya. Maybe we should go invade Syria. Maybe we should go invade Venezuela. Hey,
Yeah.
maybe we should deny healthcare to people. We don't make those kind of mistakes. Hey, maybe we should go sniff a backpack and say that we should go invade. We don't do, that's what CNN does. Oh, look, there's sarin gas. How do you know? My reporter sniffed it. Yep, that's sarin gas. That's deadly. I'm dead. So we don't make those kind of mistakes because we're not bought and paid for. We make honest mistakes. They make corrupt mistakes. Isn't it amazing? Every time the news media made a mistake in the Russia case,
Always
as Glenn
one way.
Greenwald pointed out, it was always in one direction. It was never. So if they were just making honest mistakes, you would think half the mistakes would go one way and half would go the other way, as Glenn Greenwald points out. Well, that's not how it went, is it? They all went one way because they're corrupt and they have a narrative, and that's called manufacturing consent.
But Jimmy, the New York Times won a Pulitzer for their Russiagate reporting.
Dude, they won it. I think they even won an Emmy or something for their video work they did on the gas attacks in Duma, and it was all fake. It was all made up. They just made it up.
I had Dr. Piers Robinson on. I had an interview with him, and he went through it with me. Duma is horrific because what happened in Duma.
Was that the whistleblower?
He was in contact with one of the whistleblowers. Went through him. He was one of the founders from Syria Propaganda and Syria in the media, or the group. And one of the whistleblowers, actually, I think it was the third whistleblower went through them, or the second one. It's hard to keep track because there's been 4 now from the OPCW. Not that you would know that if you open the New York Times or Washington fucking Post.
Right.
4 whistleblowers from the OPCW, correct me if I'm wrong here, are an accredited United Nations operation.
Right.
Doing for not just investigating chemical weapons attacks around the world, but can also assign blame now as well. And there are 4 whistleblowers that have come forward and that have basically said this is absolute bollocks, this narrative around Duma. I mean, you only have to look at the paperwork and the anomalies, such as, if this was chlorine, why were 100% of the people killed? Chlorine never kills. Chlorine kills about 1 in 20 people on average. So why did it kill everybody? Why was there no signs of the people in that building running away at all? This is an obvious false flag. Even in the title of my video at the time, this is going back 2017, is it 2018? Yeah. So this is over two and a half years ago. I still remember putting false flag, obvious false flag in my video. And I wasn't scared about putting obvious false flag in my video because it was fucking obvious. And the 3 of us in the UK and you and France bombed Syria a few weeks, 10 days later. And might I add, this is 2 weeks after they dragged silenced Assange in the embassy.
Right.
They silenced him just 2 weeks before. And Trump was saying he was pulling out of Syria. This all happened in a very short 7 to 10 day span.
I mean, I laid out the timeline on my show. I remember I was in Austin doing a live show, and I had people from Syria at my show, and they came up. That happens a lot. People from Iran, I have Iranians, Syrians, and they come up to me and they thank me, and lots of times they're crying, and because
that's gotta feel good.
Yeah, well, it's mixed emotions for sure. I feel really bad for them. Makes me feel horrible about this horrible media landscape we live in, but it makes me feel good that I can provide solace to some people and they can hear the truth somewhere. And so that's all. It's again, it's not hard. Reporting is just stick your head down the street and you see what's going on and report back. That's what reporting is. That's it. And they can't seem to do that. CNN, Washington Post, the BBC, Sky News, MSNBC. In fact, what they do is they just give you propaganda, which is why the world's in this position is that it's in right now.
What's do you think there's any? I mean, it's pretty fucking miserable, isn't it? Really. I mean, is there any hope? Because I started my little channel in. I suppose I became politically aware back in 2016. When obviously the Brexit vote happened, the referendum, and Donald Trump was elected. When Donald Trump was elected, I thought, well, clearly something's fucking broken here, and I need to figure out what it is, because it looks like we're going to go to war probably with this man at the helm. In the last 4 years, I've really tried to study politics, Jimmy. I've really tried to get my head around it and try to understand it. And there are basically three conclusions that I've come to. One, I would make a really shit politician. I haven't got any political acumen whatsoever. My answer to everything is to go in there with size 9 boots and just smash it all to bits and start again. The other two things are, the world needs less politics and less politicians if we're going to actually continue and go forward, because they're trying to stop progress. They're actively stopping progress, aren't they?
Well, it's the system, right? I mean, I think it depends on how you define politics. If you define politics as people working together for common good, I think we need more of that.
I would say government then.
You know, but politicians, the problem is the system where they're co-opted by the very agencies they're supposed to be regulating. I mean, it's again, you're right. It's all been predicted by Marx. So I mean, here it is. We have the corporate capture of our government, right? So let's say we have an environmental protection agency, and they're supposed to make sure that the oil companies don't ruin our environment. Okay. Well, what happens? The people who run the environmental protection agency go work for the oil companies as soon as they get out, and then they sometimes go back in the government, and then they go back there. That's what they call the revolving door. And Barack Obama was supposed to stop that. And of course they didn't. Everybody from Barack Obama's administration went to Wall Street, including Barack Obama. His first public appearance after he got out of the White House was to go give speeches for Wall Street at $400,000 to $500,000 a clip. So
1.2 million in 3 speeches, I think, in 2 weeks.
And that was his payment for what he did. So
no speech is that good. No speech is worth $400,000. They're crazy. What is he, God?
Yeah, I'll tell you. So
to kick back.
The problem is the system. It's a neoliberal system of corporate capture of our governments. We're not going to be able to vote our way out of this. How we get out of this, I think, is just for direct action. And it's happening in America. I mean, we got under a fascist like Donald Trump, we got him to admit to defund the police, you know? So that's happening across America in different cities, right? And at the same time, you have elected officials welcoming Trump's federal goons into their cities, like in Chicago. The system is more rotten than people could ever imagine. And I think that they're getting a good fucking taste of it now, because right now, even in the middle of a pandemic and a Great Depression caused by our government, they won't help people. Yeah. They won't give them health care, even in a pandemic, even when their health care is tied to their jobs and they lose their jobs because the government closed their company, they still won't give them fucking health care. And I think people are starting to get the picture now of just how shitty it is in our country. I mean, real people, not blue check Twitter. I mean, real people, working people. And I think that there's a boiling point, and I think we reached it, and I think it's only going to get worse. And I would cheer on a real revolution in this country, because that's the only thing that's going to save us. It ain't going to be fucking people like AOC and Bernie Sanders. That's for goddamn sure. They're the problem now.
I've been waiting for it to happen over here. I've been waiting for the blue touch paper to light. I like reading history, and I've found that throughout revolutions in history, there was usually we have a saying, a straw that breaks the camel's back. There's usually one small thing that leads to this revelation, that leads to a revolution, leads to an uprising. I've been waiting for it on both sides of the Atlantic. We've seen it with the Yellow Vests in France, and I've been waiting for it over here. And it's not coming. And now we've had this COVID thing. I worry whether they're going to outlaw protesting again, and we're not going to be in the streets. We're not going to be able to get in the streets.
Well, it was against the rules of social distancing and all that shit, and people went out and fucking protested in the United States. So why didn't the Gilets Jaunes catch on in the UK? What the fuck?
I know, it's just the media is the truth. The propaganda, the media, they didn't show, for a start, they didn't show that, it was going on in France. Unless you were on Twitter and you were following the right people on Twitter, you didn't know anything was going on in France. And, they're only, 6 miles or something like that from the coast of the UK. This is what was happening in Paris was closer to London, I think, than Scotland is. And, they were quiet on it all. But when the Hong Kong protests happened, they were on that. They were 6 hours a day. They were doing that. When there was uprisings in Venezuela, etc. They're following that 24/7. They weren't obviously showing the Gilets Jaunes, and when they do, it was more violence, etc. from the protesters. The drill. They're doing it over there right now in the corporate media. Right. They're showing the violence and not the peaceful protesters. They're not showing the cops cracking the peaceful protesters' heads. It's propaganda is the reason it didn't catch on.
Okay.
And I think people have got Love Island to watch, Jimmy. They've got their reality TV. You were talking about the system. I've been thinking about this, and I've been thinking about how to what happens when it all comes to an end. It certainly does feel as if it's all, as you're saying, it all comes to a point. Something's going to break soon. I believe that even horrible people, even people who have done horrible things, we need everyone to sort of have like a South Africa moment. I'm with you. I was listening to Dave Chappelle, of all people, one of his stand-ups, and I think it was the one where he first came back after the Chappelle show ended. He had a break of about 10 years, and he was saying at the end of it how, this is 2016, 2015, he was talking about, we need some sort of amnesty to say, people, this happened, you did this, but we need to understand that we're all victims of this system. Those people who work at Fox and CNN and MSNBC and what have you, you've had this argument with people in the past, I know, and whether they're horrible, terrible people or not, or whether they're just oblivious to how the system works. I feel as if they just don't know. They're oblivious to just how horrible this system is that they're aboard.
I think people like Don Lemon honestly don't know. I think guys like Anderson Cooper do.
Yeah, Anderson Cooper, Chris Hayes, etc.
Those people, and Rachel Maddow certainly do, and they're like a Greek tragedy. They just willingly gave themselves over to the machine for fame and money, and it's very seductive. It's very powerful, and you see what it does. It's like, oh my God, Rachel Maddow's gay. She wouldn't lie. Right, gay people are automatically moral. Turns out they're not.
They're fucking horrible too. They can be.
Right. I was like, oh, Chris Hayes is a nerd. Nerds would never lie. They would never be immoral. Turns out nerds are lying, immoral motherfuckers too. Gay, immoral, and gay. That turns out they're all stripes. That there's no insulation for being a horrible sellout to the machine. It doesn't matter if you're a nerd. It doesn't matter if you're what nationality you are or sexuality. They will corrupt you. $7 million a year buys a lot from Rachel Maddow and Chris Hayes, and they got it. And Lawrence O'Donnell is just a joke.
That's the
fake tough guy.
He's tough, isn't he?
Fake tough guy.
Yeah. Didn't he get fired recently, Lawrence O'Donnell? Or was that somebody else?
No,
I'm
he
thinking
got
of?
it. He had to apologize to Trump on air for launching another false story about Russia. That was kind of hilarious. But
Oh,
listen, Gordon, I got to know. I just got a text. I got a food delivery just came, so I have to go wipe it down and put it in my fridge.
okay, mate. All right.
So that's a good place to end this, I think. But this has been a blast. I've had a great time.
Thanks very much for your time, Jimmy. I know that you're really busy, and I really appreciate it, and appreciate you. Thank you very much for everything you've done.